여러분,
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would like to welcome you all to the ASEAN-ROK Logistics Think and Business Forum. I am Kim Hana, your MC. It's a great pleasure to meet you all, and I would like to welcome all the guests from home and abroad to today's forum. With COVID-19, we're seeing an excessive increase in the need for logistics services, and we're seeing a change in such services. The ASEAN Korea Logistics Think and Biz Forum is hosted by the NRC Korea, Korea Maritime Institute, FIATA 2022 Organizing Committee, and Korea International Freight Forwarders Association, and is being held as part of the convention, and this is the very first inaugural forum. Although expectations toward a recovery to normalcy are high, this event is being safely held in a non-face-to-face format to make sure the disease prevention and control system we have been painstakingly maintaining for so long is not compromised in any way. Currently, participants are joined by a video conferencing platform, home and abroad, and it is also being broadcast live on YouTube. Also in this forum, we have representatives of AFA, or ASEAN Federation of Forwarders Associations, representing the freight forwarder associations and companies in the Asian region. Singapore and Malaysia, it's 9 a.m. and Indonesia and Vietnam, it's probably 8 a.m. Very early in the morning. But despite the early hours, thank you very much for your participation today and welcome. There are multiple meetings to today's forum. It was 2019 when the ASEAN Republic of Korea Commemorative Summit took place, and we have been promoting research and regular forums for joint development between ASEAN and Korea think tanks. Also in September next year, the 2022, a FIATA World Congress will be held in Busan. This forum is noted as the Olympics for international logistics firms as well as freight forwarders, and the strategy to enable a successful FIATA World Congress will be devised here at this forum. And we also have a video on the progress made on next year's conference, so please watch the screen. FIATA is a non-governmental membership-based organization and brings together over 3,000 participants from the logistics sector. We have India, Malaysia, and the island countries. And major programs include presidency meeting, general meeting, extended board meetings. The theme is Uniting for Global Companies, and we have 120 countries and more than 3,000 participants to join us at this program. We have the Mayor program, and we have other major programs. In October 2015, the official announcement to host the Congress in Korea was made, and in October 2016, South Korea was selected as the host country for FWC 2019, and in 2017 September, Korea selected as the host country of the FWC 2022. Let me now move on to how to prepare a successful FWC 2022, an international platform and bridge to connect logistics business in and out of Korea. This is the progress made on FIATA 2022. There are structural programs, programming, marketing, and PR and operations related efforts being made for the successful FIATA. Contract with FIATA was forged in 2018. FIATA RCEP meeting in Busan was held in 2018. And site inspections to Mexico and major facilities took place in 2018. Marketing at FIATA India in 2018. Exchanging and cooperating national logistics services and information, promoting the ocean capital Busan and Korea, and encouraging and networking among global businesses. FIATA World Congress 2022, Mexico, Busan.
네, 2020년 개최 예정이었습니다.
The FIATA World Congress, which was scheduled to be held in 2020, has been postponed to next year due to COVID-19. Since the Congress was postponed for 2 years, I sense the high expectations our participants from home and particularly from abroad have for the Busan World Congress. And I ask for your active participation and support in the event. To kick off today's forum, I would like to invite Kim Jong-duk, Acting President of Korea Maritime Institute, for his opening remark. Please welcome him to the stage with a big round of applause.
네, 어서 오십시오. 환영합니다.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kim Jong-duk, the acting president
코리아 박람회
of KMI.
2021 한
The forum that you are attending right now followed the Korean ASEAN summit meeting. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for attending this forum. Especially, I'd like to thank Chairman Chung Il-gu from KRC Korea and
조직위원장님께
Mr. Kim Byung-jin, chair of the organizing committee for FIATA 2022. I'd also like to thank Mr. Yuki Inagara Huan, the chairman of AFA. It was in 2019, following the Korean ASEAN summit meeting, that the need for a regular forum was raised at the working level, and a consensus formed that a regular forum should be held for the joint development of Korean and ASEAN think tanks. So it was decided that our institution, KMI, would host the annual event. However, this is the first time we're hosting the meeting due to the pandemic last year. However, this year's inaugural meeting is more meaningful because it's being held during the Global Korea Forum Week hosted by NRC Korea. Under the new Southern Policy, which was announced in 2017, Korea-ASEAN relations developed and flourished. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, trade volume remained at the same level as 2019. And based on the new Southern Policy Plus announced by the government last year, cooperation with ASEAN countries have strengthened even further.
글로벌 공급 사슬 재편은
Especially the restructuring of the global value chain requires us to rethink and renew our cooperative relationship with ASEAN countries.
아세안
On November 10th, the Korean ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting was held for the first time. There's also a great need for cooperation with ASEAN in the area of security, including maritime and cybersecurity. If we are to remain engaged with the ASEAN countries and further advance our relationship, we need to build a structured cooperative framework to identify issues and areas for cooperation tailored to the needs of ASEAN countries.
이런 의미에서
In this respect, this forum will be the starting point for drawing a roadmap for sustainable and future-oriented cooperation. This forum will take place under the theme of Beyond the Era of Digitalization and Decarbonization. It will consist of a policy session and a business session. In the policy session, the policy research institutes affiliated with NRC Korea and overseas research institutes and governments will take part. The subject for discussion include macroeconomics, transportation, logistics, environment, energy, as well as the changing GVC after the pandemic. There will be 3 sessions. Each session will look at major issues related to the above-mentioned topics. In the business session, there will be presentations by professionals in the logistics business. When organizations from various sectors share information and network with each other, new opportunities for collaboration will be identified, resulting in a cross-border cooperation that is more synergistic. Once again, I thank everyone for participating in today's forum, and
모든 분들
I hope that logistics cooperation between Korea and ASEAN is further expanded and strengthened as we go forward.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
네, 박수 부탁드립니다. 대회사 오늘 행사에
Yes, thank you very much for your opening remarks. And as mentioned, I believe that this forum will serve to strengthen the partnership between ASEAN and the Republic of Korea.
그러면 이번에는 2000
Thank you. And next, I would like to invite Chairman Kim Byung-jin of the 2022 FIATA Busan World Congress Organizing Committee for his congratulatory speech. Please welcome him with a big hand.
안녕하십니까. 금방
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As was introduced, I am the honorary chairman of KIFA and the chairman of the 2022 FIATA Busan World Congress Organizing Committee. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Acting President Kim Jong-duk of Korea Maritime Institute for providing such a meaningful event despite the difficult circumstances.
함께 하고 있는
In addition, I would like to thank my longtime colleague and friend,
아파 육기 회장
Chairman Yuki Nugrawan of AFA, Vice Chairman Alvin Chua, and Honorary Secretary and Stanley Lim for joining us online.
초청을 하고
We wanted to invite you to Korea in person,
온라인을 통해
but we ask for your understanding that that could not happen due to COVID-19.
뜻깊은 것은
Today's event is particularly meaningful because November 2019, when I visited Vietnam at the invitation of AFA as the then president of KIFA, the Korean International Freight Forwarders Association, and chairman of the 2020 FIATA Busan World Congress Organizing Committee, an MOU was signed between KIFA and AFA. And at the time, the ASEAN-Korea Summit was being held in Busan, Korea. As you're very well aware, Asia is a key region that accounts for 70% of the world's logistics.
정책으로
And at the same time, the cooperation system between Korea and ASEAN is being strengthened thanks to the government's new Southern policy. And at this juncture, a private sector-oriented MOU between KIFA and AFA carries symbolic meaning.
2020년 9월 부산
However, due to COVID-19, the FIATA World Congress, which was scheduled to be held in Busan in September 2020, had to be postponed 2 years to 2022. And the entire world, along with the global network of the logistics industry, temporarily had to come to a stop with tangible and intangible damage caused by the global pandemic. However, as the saying goes, a crisis is an opportunity, and a wave of change set in the logistics industry due to COVID-19, and the rapid increase in import and export cargo due to the greatly facilitated non-face-to-face trade has led to the necessity to strengthen global cooperation to support this change. The title of today's forum is Think and Business. That is, policy and research and business sessions will be held in parallel. And after the forum, the presentations and discussions of the business session will be delivered to policies and research institutes to reflect the diverse needs of the industry in policy making.
그동안 늘 기대해왔던
This was something I have been yearning for, and I would like to express my gratitude once again on behalf of the industry for making that come true.
피아타 총회에 대해서
I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to next year's FIATA World Congress. The event is noted as the Global Logistics Olympics to be joined by more than 3,000 participants from 120 countries. Considering that we were basically disconnected for 2 years, it is expected that an extraordinary number of attendees will come. By all means,
피아타 초기가 개최.
It was mentioned at the Executive Council that we would like to meet one another in person, and we were able to sense the passion and affection towards the conference from the Executive Council members. And I would like to see everyone here again, not online, but in person at next year's FIATA Busan World Congress. Lastly, I would like to express my gratitude to all those who worked hard to prepare for today's forum, and the event was made possible thanks to all of the speakers and panelists connecting from abroad, Seoul and Busan. Thank you so much for making today possible. Thank you, and I wish the best of luck to all of our online and offline participants.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The FIATA World Congress will be held next year in September, and the chairman of the organizing committee, Mr. Kim Byung-jin, is very much working hard towards its success. The MOU signed in 2019 was very meaningful, and at that time, Chairman Kim Byung-jin was invited to Vietnam. KIFA and AFA signed an MOU. This forum is also an outcome of this cooperative relationship, and also the MOU provided a basis for next year's World Congress. The next person that I would like to introduce to you will be speaking to you online. He is Chairman Yuki Nugrawahan of AFA. He will be delivering the keynote speech. He will be meeting you online.
기조 연설을
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you for joining us today. If you are ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Honorable.
Okay, can you hear me? If you are ready, begin your speech, please. 네, 잠시 연결 상태가 고르지 못.
I apologize for the bad connection. I think he is about to proceed.
Okay. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so let me start. Very good morning, the Honorable Mr. Kim Jung, the Acting Chairman of KMI, the Honorable Council of KIFA, and of course my best friend, Mr. B.G. Kim, is the Chairman, the Honorable Council of AFA, the distinguished participants of the ASEAN Republic of Korea Logistics Think and Business Forum. First of all, as a chairman of AFA, I would like to thanks to KIFA KIFA is the most potential forum. KIFA has been the excellent partner for AFA to go forward in facing the challenging new era. The ASEAN Republic of Korea Logistics Think and Business Forum is an interesting event in the purpose to see and study the update situation in logistics. Business, especially during the pandemic COVID-19 era. Despite the current situation of a COVID-19 outbreak is really challenging, KIFA with the excellent cooperation with AFA always collaborate. AFA, the ASEAN Federation Forwarder Association, is the regional intergovernmental organization. Organization comprising of 10 Southeast Asia states, which is established since 7 December 1991 as the partner of ASEAN and UNESCO AFA is the only entity from logistic industry accredited by the ASEAN chapter. AFA has the obligation to promote logistic and supply chain through intergovernmental corporation and facilities cargo transport through service transport among its member and ASEAN states. AFA consider that Republic of Korea, especially KIFA, as the most strategical partner in ensuring the good run of the logistic operation within the region, as well creating strategy to ensure the maximum development of the logistic industry. Will be possible to support its member of AFA and KIFA to be able to collaborate and widen the network. ASEAN has been the strategic region to take the big role in the region and the future coming economic. Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership initiative has brought the great optimism for the region to enlarge the role in economic world. The increase of the population, the new habit in fulfilling people needs caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the fast development of the technology has opened many chances and opportunity that burden the business coverage. ASEAN Regional has the strategic sustainable transport and logistic operation. The strategy provides recommended action for corporation at the regional level and serves as the guidance for national level action, plans, and strategic sustainable transport. First, recommendation for green freight policy and measure containing the logistic optimism, for example, by reducing empty hauling or implementing logistic centers as a freight exchange. The strategic also mentioning the modal shift for the freight connectivity from route to rail, waterway, and maritime transport. This also includes the project of greening of truck by improving efficiency and alternative fuel and eco driving. Decarbonization has also been one of the action. This should be support with the common action. For example, increasing the transport efficiency by route optimism, reduce traffic. Vehicle optimism by minimizing empty load and optimize the fleet utilization also by shifting less carbon intensity mode. Second, the interesting action through digitalization, setting up inventory of the digitalization solution is the real as part of the COVID-19 response. This is also need to create the common capacity building program on transport and logistic digitalization for ASEAN. Will also be applied in the cross-border transport services. Third, taking effort through the realization program, we need consider financial action targeted to be the transport industry, example, loans. Also, by strengthening adaptation measure for transport connectivity through the risk management and encourage seamless multimodality through the implementing AFAM initiative. Concern of the RCEP concept, the great cooperation between KIFA and AFA ensure the high corporation to have concept of cooperation in industrial research. This is to ensure in commemorating the 2022 FIATA World Congress in Busan. By having close cooperation between KIFA and AFA, we can together discuss all possibly pending issue and discover the joint policy tax and business cooperation project between think tank and industry representative of the Republic of Korea and AFA member in logistics sectors. We have been challenged to create the industry research corporation system between KIFA and ASEAN Federation of Water Association for joint development on the basis of the new Southern policy. We need to establish the mid to long-term network to ensure good cooperation for the proposed revitalizing the ASEAN Republic of Korea logistic business. We have to seek the best strategy for the exciting forwarding company to do sufficient response to the future and establish an ASEAN and Republic of Korea consultative body in response to the impact of 4.0 industrial revolution, as well the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Together, we need to identify the needs of the freight forwarding industry, considering the demand and seek development direction. To make logistic company member of AFA and KIFA been trusted by sellers, buyers in the service of delivery, strong storage, packaging, inventory management, and supporting reliable services. As the chairman of AFA, I would like to underline again my great thanks to KIFA, the President BG Kim, who has been the great partner of AFA. This is developing the business and supporting its member together. Hope the great success this event and bring the joy to motivate all the members to promote better services through the concept of increasing service level, capacity building, digitalization, and promoting the green logistic in RAN region. Stay safe and healthy for everybody. Thank you very much.
네, 큰 박수.
A big round of applause, please. Thank you very much,
말씀해주신 것처럼
Chairman Yuki, for your keynote speech. We can see that ASEAN's role will be even greater in the overall global logistics domain, and we look forward to active cooperation and collaboration between Korea and ASEAN freight forwarders. And we truly hope that we can see you, Chairman Yuki, in Busan. Once again, thank you very much.
한국과
Despite the early hours, many participants from Korea and ASEAN are joining us in the opening ceremony of the ASEAN-Korea Logistics Think and Biz Forum. We thank you very much. And shortly, we will divide into two parallel sessions, one on policy and the other on business, starting at 11 a.m. Please stay with us till the very end, and I hope you enjoy the in-depth discussions on policy and business cooperation measures and strategies throughout the day.
고맙습니다.
Thank you very much.
The Korea ASEAN Think Biz Forum will begin right now. The Logistic Think and Biz Forum consists of 3 sessions today. The first session will take place in the morning and will deal with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP. And the topic will be Korean ASEAN logistics industry. 2 speakers will be making the presentations, and there will be 2 additional discussants who will come on stage.
한국어, 영어,
And for your information, Korean and English simultaneous interpretation is being provided. Korean channel is number 2, English channel is number 1. I would like to ask everyone to please conclude your presentations in 15 to 17 minutes. RCEP is the world's largest free trade agreement.
논의가
We will be discussing how we need to prepare ourselves for the launch of RCEP. The first speaker is Mr. Chung Jae-hwan, who is a licensed custom agent. Please welcome him on stage.
네, 관세사님께서는 오늘 영내 포 두 번째 협정을 통한 한
Yes, the title of his presentation is Win-Win Strategy for the ASEAN-Korea Logistics Industry through RCEP. Once again, a big round of applause, please, for our first speaker.
안녕하십니까.
Hello, everyone.
오늘 이런 국제적인 포럼에서 이제 발표를 하게
It's a great pleasure to meet you all, and it's a great honor to present at this meaningful event. I didn't know that this convention was of significant scale,
세계적으로 송출된
and I know that this convention is being broadcast live around the world, and it's a great pleasure to be a part of this event.
경제 동반
As mentioned, I want to talk about RCEP and what kind of win-win strategy can be possible in the logistics industry. The existing FTAs were focused on not logistics but on lowering tariffs. There were many individual FTAs, so what happened was if it was a bilateral agreement, it was about the conditions to ease or lower tariffs, and also it was about the rules of countries of origin. And RCEP is something that we can see as a mega FTA, and we do now have the luxury to focus on logistics, and I believe that this is a great opportunity for not only Korea, but also for the ASEAN countries. Let me first introduce myself. I am, as introduced, Chung Jae-hwan. More than 10 years, I've been working as a certified customs broker, and I was in charge of dealing with FTA-related issues. And I've continued on with my studies to get my PhD on public administration.
매우 큽니다.
I know that there are high expectations towards RCEP, and I would like to talk about how that can be utilized in our win-win strategy.
공부를 하거나 아니면 교육을 할 거나
In my work or when I'm engaging in any training or lectures, the question that often
우리나라 대
is posed is that why do we need another FTA compared to other individual FTAs? What kind of benefits or advantages does our mega FTA like RCEP have? So that is an often frequently asked questions. I would like to compare individual FTAs and mega FTAs. And the second part of my presentation will be on the expected effects of such mega FTA. And last but not least will be on the RCEP rules.
앞서 말씀드렸다시피 우리나라는
As mentioned, Korea, excluding Japan, already has an individual FTA with the ASEAN countries. So then, why do we need another layer? Why do we need RCEP? Why is Korea and the countries around the world have such a high expectation towards RCEP?
그렇습니다. 자유무역을 이제 WTO가
FTA under the WTO regime
되진 않았습니다. 그럼 우리끼리
is about free trade, but it's not as. But you can see that world trade was not as free, so that's why we decided to forge an FTA. But an individual FTA is about just two counterparties. In other words, it's about exclusivity. Third parties are excluded from the formula. And for our country to become the country of origin, what we have to do is we need to use the raw materials of the counterparty, or we need to use raw materials from our country. But when that happens, it's true that we can ease tariffs amongst ourselves, but if this is exported to another country, such advantages will not be valid. And even if we do become the country of origin, depending on the FTA, there are different rules of origin, and it's very difficult to satisfy these rules. And for certain FTAs, certain products are against concession and some are not. So because of these differentiated rules, it's very difficult to fully take advantage of the benefits.
우리나라가 이제
When we do have added FTAs, we can say that we do have a robust trade relationship with many countries, but what happens now is a spaghetti bowl effect where it's all intertwined, and in some sense it makes it very cumbersome to follow all of these different rules, and it outweighs the benefits. Even if we do have an individual FTA,
산지 규정과
with a mega FTA, we can make this less cumbersome with a universal rule set,
원칙에 대한 완화
and also by easing direct transport rules we can say that these individual FTAs and the costs that were incurred in the process can be reduced.
나라라고 본다라.
And if we think of this bloc as one single country or one single trade bloc, we can also utilize logistic hubs to reduce transport costs. That is why many people have high expectations for RCEP. RCEP is the world's largest free trade agreement in terms of population, GDP, imports, and exports. It's close to 30% of the world's total.
대한민국 RCEP 회원국 개별 FTA 체결 현황입니다. 이미
These are some of the individual FTAs forged with RCEP member countries. You can see that we have FTAs in effect, signed, agreed, or under negotiations. RCEP is to come into effect next year, and as mentioned, we
RCEP이 기대
look forward to the advantages of RCEP. And the reason why RCEP has benefits is because of the accumulation rules. The existing individual FTA had to do with using the raw materials of the other party, or by using the raw materials, and once we generate value added, then it's certified as a country of origin. However, under this mega FTA, what happens is you can utilize the raw materials of all of the RCEP member countries. Once again, it indicates that we do not have to simplify our materials sourcing to a single nation of an individual FTA. And that also enables us to utilize the benefits of preferential tariffs within the bloc. We have a certificate of origin of RCEP, and once that's confirmed,
기존 개별 FTA
what happens is this accumulation can kick in, where we can actively engage in trade by utilizing this origin concept.
우리나라를 비롯하여 거의 모든 나라들이
Korea and countries around the world have multiple FTAs with multiple countries. But the disadvantage here is that the exporters have so many rules of origin that they must comply with. And even if we do have one that was certified or accredited, there's another set of rules for another country. Is that if there's any change in materials or value added, you have to start from scratch.
증빙서류 관련 비용이
And there were more costs related to documentation of origin. So we saw that FTA utilization was going down. So with more individual FTAs, you can see that the utilization rate amongst the SMEs is actually on the decrease, which is a major concern for governments. And there's also a dysfunction that disrupts the trade flows, because if in an individual FTA, if we have a skewed trade balance,
보면은
if you're on site, on the field,
분명히 0%가
in terms of tariffs, it may be 0%. However, in terms of the non-tariffs,
지연되는 제한
we are seeing some limitations in the revenue that you can reap from the trade.
특히 이제 최근 몇 년 사이에 이제
Recently,
이제 비관세 장벽을 계속 강화하는
certain countries, due to COVID-19, start to strengthen their non-tariff barriers.
FTA를 하다 보니까
But in addition to that, due to multiple individual FTAs, we are seeing the trade flow being disrupted because of this spaghetti bowl effect.
RCEP 즉 메가 FTA 역할이라고
So then let me now move on to the role of RCEP, or mega FTA. Opportunities to be recognized as originating goods can be expanded. As mentioned, for certain cases it was not recognized, for other countries it was recognized, so it was inconsistent. However, now with this mega FTA, trade restrictions can be eased. And not only that, companies' options for material sourcing in member countries can be expanded. In the past, due to the rules of origin, we had to use our domestic materials or that of our counterparty of the FTA. However, with RCEP, we can utilize the raw materials of all of the member countries. So there are more options to choose from, and they can diversify their revenue source.
영내 가치사슬 구축 및 강화하는 효과가 있습니다.
And it also helps build and strengthen the regional value chain, and it's also a factor of changing in the import sources, and it can also help us establish a global value chain through process accumulation.
통합화가 가속화될 수 있습니다.
And we can accelerate regional integration by establishing a regional division of labor and collaboration system. And with this acceleration of integration, we will be able to create an extensive free trade zone amongst the member countries.
기존에
The existing FTA, as mentioned, was focused on lowering tariffs, but a mega FTA can focus on logistics.
물류 비용은 우리나라에서
Transport costs in an individual FTA
하고 개별 FTA
was very high because there was no hub. It was just a one-on-one relationship between the country and the counterparty, so there were some logistics concerns and transport cost issues. But with RCEP, it's very different because we can facilitate warehousing.
베트남, 중국 등
Singapore, Vietnam, and China are some of the countries where
하고 있는데
we are relocating our logistics warehousing. And through these hubs or through such hub countries, what we can do is produce the goods or transport the goods to those warehousing hubs to have it sold in RCEP markets. And when we can do that, we can, of course, lower transport costs.
말씀드리고자 하는 건
The point I would like to make in our win-win strategy is all indicated here on this slide.
기존에는 FTA 특혜 관세로 인한 이득
There were some benefits from FTA preferential tariffs, in other words, by easing tariffs. However, with the direct transport rule, transport costs to comply with the rules of origin is something that's gaining more focus.
지역을 통해
With RCEP, as mentioned, we have the hubs and
규모의
a facilitation of transport leading to economies of scale. So it was difficult to apply logistics in the individual FTAs, but we can reduce transport costs per unit, and the effect of economies of scale will kick in the process.
FTA와 RCEP의 차이가 이 화면으로 요약될 수가 있습니다.
This is the comparison between individual FTAs and RCEP.
수출한다라고
If we want to export to a third RCEP country, then there were some issues. You can see that if we do have an ASEAN country, and if it's to New Zealand or Australia, for instance, what rules should apply? If we have products in Vietnam warehouses, we have to utilize BWT. If we do utilize BWT, should this be recognized? And if we do recognize BWT, what kind of documentation is required was the issue. And not only that, when we transport our products to these warehouses, but if it's not just about warehousing, it's about processing. And if we see that the local region becomes the country of origin, how will the FTA apply? So in terms of the existing FTAs, it made it too complex to have these hubs in the interim, and that's why there were a lot of limitations in trade, and it was quite inconvenient. However, under this RCEP scheme, all of the countries are connected, so the hub countries can be utilized. So that hub country, it could be used for production, for warehousing, but irrespective of the purpose, a free trade flow is possible within the RCEP region.
기대 효과라고 하면
Next is on the expected effects of the mega FTA or the RCEP agreement.
그리고
What happens is the convenience of FTA utilization due to streamlined rules of origin will be greatly enhanced, and increased FTA application rates is something that we can see. And the simplified procedure for issuing a certificate of origin through the approved exporter system will also help us expand exports and also create a value chain between and among countries in the region.
직접 운송
And particularly, the easing of direct transport standards is key, which helps us secure logistics hubs in the region, reducing logistics costs. So this is the greatest benefit that comes from the RCEP agreement.
직접 운송 원칙이라고 하면 수출물품의
Let me talk about the direct transport rule. Preferential tariffs are applied only to cases where exported goods are transported from an exporting country to an importing country without passing through another country under the direct transport rule. So in the existing FTA, you needed certificate of non-manipulation or through bill of landing. Documentation all differ depending on the FTA you're talking about, and that led to certain disputes and conflicts. However, under the RCEP agreement, it's all combined and integrated into one block. So the rules of direct transport is greatly eased.
활용하는 데 있어서 가장 기대.
And as mentioned, this is the greatest benefit that comes from RCEP.
기존에는 이제 뭐 통과 선화증권 복화 본성
You
증권
mentioned that there were many proof documents that were required and slightly different documents required depending on the FTA, including through bill of landing or multimodal transport bill of landing. However, we can ease all of these regulations once we have the RCEP up and running. Last but not least is on the introduction of new rules due to the expansion of e-commerce. Compared to the Korea ASEAN FTA, we can say that
FTA에서는 적
there are many benefits. There were especially trade facilitation issues that were very difficult to resolve, and the non-tariff barriers were also an issue in the existing FTAs. However, there will be new rules that will deal with that in RCEP.
이 RCEP을 통해 우리는 두 가지 전략으로
Through RCEP, there are two strategies that can be possible. First is to actively utilize the hubs
자국을 중심으로
to have products be transported in and out of your country. So that could be one strategy. Another strategy would be focusing on low-cost centers or areas with low transport costs, and you can relocate your production outlets to increase your trade. So that could be another strategy possible under RCEP.
여기까지고
So that is all for my presentation.
저는 다시 이제 그 토론 시간에
And I will meet you back during the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
박수 부탁드립니다. 정재
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung Jae-hwan. You talked about RCEP in detail
또 어떤
and compared it with the other FTAs. He also talked about what we can expect to gain from RCEP. We will meet him again during the discussion time that will soon follow.
RCEP에 대해서 저희가 충분히
Session 1 of this business session was on RCEP. It is to better our understanding, and RCEP is to come into force next year on January 1st. We believe that it will help facilitate trade, but we also need to prepare well in advance, and we would like to now engage in a panel discussion to find better ways to make RCEP
첫 번째
and take advantage of RCEP. Let me now introduce you to our panelists. Let me first invite Lee Jung-hwan, Secretary General of FIATA 2022, and Director Kim Seung-hyun of Four-Man Shipping. Let me also invite our two speakers, Dr. Chung Jae-hwan and Honorary Secretary Stanley Lim.
응답까지
We will now engage in a panel discussion as well as a Q&A session.
네, 모두 무대로 모셨는데요.
Thank you for joining us on the stage. First, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Lee Jung-hwan. Very nice to meet you all. I am the CEO of Gebruder Vice Korea. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you. I am also the Secretary General of FIATA 2022 Organizing Committee. Although it is an honorary position, I will do my best.
정지한 박사님과 그다음에
I would like to thank the wonderful presentations of Dr. Chung Jae-hwan and Honorary Secretary Stanley Lim. And I would like to add a few comments from the perspective of a person as an individual currently engaged in the international logistics industry. If you look at the world trade structure, we are moving from the GATT of 1948 and WTO of 1995, or multilateralism, to bilateralism and regionalism that would include FTA, NAFTA, EU, TPP, and of course RCEP. Multilateralism has contributed to revitalizing offshore and interregional trade as a single bloc, but there's also a view that developed countries took much of the pie.
이런 RCEP 같은
And trade regionalism, such as RCEP, which forms the world into an exclusive regional bloc, is believed by the mainstream that it contributes to a greater extent to revitalization of regional trade. So in any case, it is quite evident that regionalism and multilateralism promotes the revitalization of international logistics. The dictionary definition of international transportation is service activities that contribute to value formation through changes in the location of goods internationally. In this globalized and fiercely competitive business environment, companies will want to procure raw materials for their product production from anywhere in the world as long as quality and price is desirable. And if there is a more competitive location for manufacturing, shipping, transport, and delivery, we are willing to establish that factory or logistics center wherever that place may be. This further develops international trade and increases the importance of international transport. Then what about international multimodal transport? As you all know, the dictionary definition is as follows. According to the UN Convention on International Multimodal Transport, international multimodal transport is a type of foreign freight transport where an international transport carrier, in accordance with a multimodal transport contract, takes over the cargo under his or her responsibility and uses at least two types of transport from a certain point in one country to the scheduled delivery point in another country. So then what is the difference between international logistics and domestic logistics? The biggest difference is increase in cost. For example, the cost of manufacturing it in Busan and selling in Seoul, and that with the logistics costs when it's sold in New York, there is a major difference. Of course, there is the complexity of filling out paperwork and so forth, but at the end of the day, it's about increased costs. And because international logistics has a much higher cost burden than domestic logistics, as globalization of a certain company progresses, the strategic value of international logistics will be greater. In addition, since companies are opening production factories, logistics warehouses, and agencies in various regions at home and abroad, the more active the transport of parts and finished goods between these points, the more important the management of international logistics will be. As in the case of Apple, global companies procure more than half of their raw materials and products from overseas, and as in the case of Zara, the advancement of logistics services such as diversification of product types, segmentation of demand, fashionization, and shortening of lead time according to these needs, and improvement of delivery efficiency is a necessity. And we do see that there's a need for a flexible logistics system in line with the shortened product life cycle, or PLC. And this is in high demand when we develop such international logistics. As was mentioned by our two speakers, RCEP is to further accelerate and substantiate the revitalization of intra-regional trade. As such, the importance of logistics is increasing, and there is one term that's oftenly used. Many global companies use the word not freight forwarding but logistics. But if we go back to the word logistics, the etymology is said to have been derived from the French logistique, which Napoleon of France referred to as a strategy for managing and transporting military supplies during wartime. It is a system that comprehensively manages various activities related to logistics, such as packing, transporting, unloading, storing, and managing related information and documents. The reason why I am going into this terminology is because the Korean government has yet to officially accredit logistics companies. It's just international freight forwarding business, where the registration certificate is just International Logistics Forwarding Business Registration Certificate that is issued by the Transportation Department of Seoul Metropolitan City. The world is demanding logistics. However, Korea still remains in freight forwarding in its administration. So whether it be international multimodal transport or whether it be logistics forwarding, what kind of strategy should a logistics company like ours pursue? Well, first of all, from the perspective of a global company that performs international logistics, since the target market is mainly overseas, It's important to have an international logistics system in place so that products and services are properly offered in overseas markets and that customer services abroad is provided with convenience. In addition, logistics management of global companies is it is necessary to establish a CIP or continuous improvement plan according to the procedures of logistics organization, international environment analysis, strategic plan, logistics operation plan, logistics implementation status management, and evaluation and improvement. I've mentioned that costs would be the critical issue, and there's a need for us to increase the cost effectiveness of CIP. And as I said before, the biggest difference between domestic and international logistics is cost. So in general, transportation and inventory problems are the most important factors for international logistics efficiency. And transportation distance is longer, and inventory ratio is higher for international logistics. So we have to look into how to enhance efficiency. When international logistics activities are approached in terms of total cost, are individual when invisible cost factors, and they're more important than visible factors. So we need to identify all that. And the cost structure of logistics can be largely divided into transport costs, transport-related inventory costs, and transportation costs include freight and incidental costs, and transportation-related inventory costs are largely divided into safety inventory costs and inventory costs during transport. Considering these invisible costs, the cost of proper inventory and the cost of that risk and international logistics began to build local logistics systems since 1980s.
개인적으로 제가 이거를 한국에
In 1990, in 1990, there was the famous HP postpone strategy. And personally, I contributed to introducing this concept in Korea, and I found out that this was used as a business case in an MBA course. So we need international logistics, so we should not remain as just freight forwarding companies.
기업들의 경쟁력
The weakening of the competitiveness of a logistics company in a country can be directly related to the weakening of the competitiveness of companies that the country is trying to enter into. When I attended the 2019 FIATA World Congress in Cape Town, South Africa, the chairman, Barbar Badat, emphasized a key point. I don't exactly remember the wording, but he said that we are not freight forwarder anymore, but we are a logistician. What does this mean? Well, international logistics companies
관여할 수는 없습니다.
cannot just confine themselves to transport. In other words, all costs must be managed effectively with both exporters and importers. And as mentioned above, the importance of international logistics is becoming even more important with the concept of RCEP. Now, in addition to transportation costs, we have packaging costs, warehousing fees, rate of decrease in product value per unit time during transport, incidental costs such as interest, insurance premiums, custom duties, lost costs due to delay in delivery, and the interests of both parties when concluding contract between exporters and importers. And there are also local circumstances, and accordingly, these various logistic costs and additional items must be managed together with exporters and importers, and we're seeing this demand coming from our consumers.
저희 같은 로지스틱 회사가 글로벌
In the case of a company like mine, a logistics company, we need to find the point to maximize efficiency within this global network. So I wonder if we do want to find that point of maximizing efficiency with this global network, what kind of role can FIATA 2022 play in this endeavor? I know that Mr. Stanley Lim probably will have some insights to offer with us. So can you give us more information on how we can maximize efficiency of the global network through FIATA 2022?
Thank you very much. We have the general international trend taking place, and for Korean logistics company to become more competitive and reduce costs, there are certain issues raised. Mr. Stanley Lim has also received a question in this respect. What do you think is the significance of the FIATA Congress taking place next year in Busan?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. As the Congress, FIATA World Congress 2022 happened to be in October next year, is a long way from now. But this issue need to be addressed, in fact, now. But I think by the time it gets to Busan World Congress, we will be much more clearer, and some work has been done already. But I would think that Fiesta World Congress will provide a very good platform for discussion on various issues concerning trade, logistics, even climate change, the green logistics, sustainable logistics, etc. I think the important that the Fiesta World Congress can assist to address quite a number of issues, and also the various government agencies, I think in Korea, should participate and better provide to the logistics industry a good direction, especially on the various infrastructure development and how to assist in funding the infrastructure, technological, smart solutions, automation, and moving towards the sustainable logistics. I think with RCEP coming in, I think it's most important will be the logistic cost and the trade facilitation, and see how the platform of the Fiesta World Congress can assist to highlight all these during the discussions within the region, Asia Pacific, or even to the level of the Multimodal Transport Institute. So I think the World Congress will be a very, very good place for this forum to discuss. And I hope that more delegates from around the world will come, and at least we create a program that is to gather the valuable speakers during the Fiesta World Congress, so that we have a fruitful and outcome will be good for the logistics industry. Thank you.
네. 답변 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for that response.
부산 총회가
The Fiesta Busan World Congress that will take place next year.
지원하는 것, 그리고
Honorary Secretary Stanley Lim mentioned that it will help us build the foundation, IT infrastructure, and also discuss sustainable ways forward. And Mr. Lim mentioned that we need to put in a lot of efforts to find solutions in all of these domains. Thank you very much for your response. And let us now invite our next panelist. I would like to invite Director Kim Seung-yeon of Foreman Shipping for his comments. I am Seung-yeon Kim. So Dr. Chung and Mr. Lim and Secretary General Lee, thank you very much for your comments. And today, I want to say that although I was aware of RCEP, it did give me a good opportunity to better my understanding. So let me just share with you some thoughts and pose a question to Dr. Chung. As mentioned, I'm working on the field. We are a small logistics SME, and we do have transactions with large companies, but mostly we focus on cargo owners with SMEs. And as was mentioned by Dr. Chung, the existing FTAs, was it really beneficial for SMEs? Well, as mentioned, there were many concerns and many issues. If you look at the cost actually, in many cases, outweigh the benefits from the FTA. So, if there is another FTA forged with another country, the SMEs will have to get another set of consulting from expert agencies, because it would be a whole new set of rules. So we thought if we can have some type of economic bloc in Asia, just like the EU, that would be much more efficient. So there was that consensus out there. And as mentioned, RCEP helps reduce transport and logistics costs. And in that aspect, there are many benefits that we can take advantage of. As a person, as a logistics person, East direct transport rule is of great advantage, and as you shown us on your BBT, with strengthened roles of the bonded warehouse, so we will be able to change the paradigm of logistics. But we do know that there are many advantages to RCEP, but there are certain issues and concerns that are mentioned on the field in the process of consulting. So the first concern, as was mentioned, logistics companies in Korea are not as global as we want them to be. Logistics services is required, but we don't have many companies that offer such services, and there are regulations put by the government and some insufficiencies in government regulations. So we don't have many local logistics service companies, and there are large companies. Large logistics companies that are particularly an affiliate of a major conglomerate, which it's actually has an affiliated relationship with the cargo owner. Because I am a logistics person, as mentioned, and we of course want to maximize our profits, but we also represent the interests of the cargo owners. And I think the major benefit of RCEP is that we can do things differently. We can use the logistics hub. And when we proceed with exports or imports, we can reduce logistics costs. And you've mentioned 2 points. Many Korean companies import raw materials, process that, and when it's exported out, in that process, Korea can become the logistics hub, and many companies are making inroads into overseas markets these days. So what can happen is they can utilize that local region as a hub and then export that to a third country. So there could be many strategies. So my question to Dr. Chung is the following. My first question. With this RCEP agreement, this very beneficial agreement, I would like to understand how can cargo owners and logistics companies really benefit from this? According to surveys, still many companies are going to overseas markets, and the reason why this is being done has to do with commodity prices. There aren't that many differences in commodity prices around the world because now we're a globalized network, and it boils down to low costs, low personnel costs or labor costs, not commodity costs. That's why we go to Vietnam or China and relocate our facilities there. So then, if we do have a logistics hub in these regions, what can Korean logistics companies do? Do they have the capabilities to run a logistics hub in these local regions? And in the case of the cargo owners, if we want, India is not included here in RCEP, but at any rate, in the logistic hub locations, can Korean logistics companies have some value to offer? That's my question. And we also have here Mr. Stanley Lim with us, but there is some skepticism. There are already logistics hubs in the region, and some may think that there may be some limitations to reduce logistics costs further than what we have right now. And because we have China in RCEP, some people think that all of the logistics hubs will be located or concentrated in China. So there is that concern. So I would like to ask your take on that. And my second question, I think that this can be answered by the response by Mr. Lim. But the RCEP agreement will be changing many things in the region. But if you look at the region, if you take a closer look at the region, in the global value chain, we do have consuming nations, but rather than that, we have producing nations and the nations that provide raw materials. Australia would be, of course, an exception. But at any rate, the rules of origin issues and in terms of coherence and convenience, that will be improved. But RCEP countries mostly sell their products in the US and Europe. So if we do engage in any trade with them, what kind of certificate of origin will be necessary? And another point is we have TPP and the CPTPP. So there can be certain issues with that regime. So can you elaborate on that as well? And last but not least, RCEP has China a part of it. So then, let's say that the US and China, the rivalry, if there's a trade dispute between the two, what will happen? With just the RCEP rules, will Korean products be allowed to be exported to the US markets? Will there be any disadvantages? So I would appreciate it if you would answer these questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim Seung-yeon. Since you are operating a small medium enterprise, you asked whether Korean companies were competitive enough to take advantage of this globalized world. 3 questions were posed to Mr. Chung Jae-hwan. Would you like to take those questions first? The first question to you was about the fact that if we build a logistic hub in Korea, what will be the role of Korean logistics companies? It's a very technical question requiring expertise. Thank you for the question. I think I emphasized the positive aspects in my presentation, but you actually pinpointed the exact issues that I was concerned about. When I first started this business, and I was a junior, this is what I heard from my boss. Hey, the logistics cost has decreased compared to 10 years ago. 10 years have passed again, and I'm saying the same thing. The costs have gone down. So that means logistics costs keep going down and down. As a result, the logistics companies are engaged in cost competition rather than providing professional logistics services. Furthermore, in Korea, wages are so important, so we go to China, Vietnam, and even Indonesia. Even before coming here, I looked up a lot of materials and found out that many countries are making efforts at the government level to become a logistics hub. But in Korea, I think we're still lagging behind in this respect. So, as you just asked, can Korean logistics company really fulfill the role of becoming part of a logistics hub? I think for that to happen, we need active support from the government. Yes, government support as well as a lot of effort will be required. What about the other questions? Do you think RCEP will bring a lot of changes to the member states, especially? How will it affect the companies who are selling a lot? And what sort of impact will it have, especially in the case where a trade dispute occurs? The question itself was quite general. Can you repeat your question one more time?
So, for example, if we are faithful to the RCEP rules and the rules of origin, of course, this should not happen. But what happens is there are many RCEP member countries that sell their products or export their products to the US and to Europe. But if there is any trade dispute, I think that these rules may not be valid in such cases. In principle, what we wanted was to have this block for production, but we're talking about TPP right now. But I think that these concerns would not be of a concern if it was of a different structure. But I just wanted to know if it's against this, if it's according to this RCEP regime, will there be any disadvantages when there's a trade dispute, but when we still want to export our products to the US or EU markets?
사실 이제 RCEP 자체가 이제 아세안 국가를 중심으로
RCEP is centered on ASEAN.
약간 우려되는 게 아마 방금
And I'm sure that the concern is the following. If we go beyond RCEP,
국가가 원산지가 되었.
when we produce
왜 국가
in RCEP, and if we want to export these goods to a third country, what kind of advantages are there is probably the question that you're posing. RCEP accounts for 30% of the world, but then we have the remaining 70%. And Korea's trade dependence is very high, and its trade transactions are focused on not only ASEAN but also the US and Europe. So yes, there is a concern because if you're too skewed towards RCEP, and in other words, if we have regionalism in place, and when we are accredited for according to the origin rules, there will be different rules that apply in the U.S. and Europe.
그런 지역 차
And then there could be another set of regional discrimination. And once again, what happens here is
이제 보호무역이 쪽
we may be seeing more protectionism amongst the member countries.
그렇고 이제 어찌됐건 우리나라가 좋은 게 이제 RCEP의
But I think that a pro for us is that we do have individual FTAs with the ASEAN countries, and we're preparing for this mega FTA. So I think that we can facilitate all of these channels through the mega FTAs. I think that that will help us facilitate trade in addition to the individual FTAs that may be complementing the process.
중
2
이제
years back, due to the trade dispute between the US and China, I know that it was very challenging for you all.
과연 이제 우리 이 RCEP 내에서는 이제
So, within RCEP, we do have the customs procedures and trade facilitation rules, but then if there is a trade dispute with a third party, and if we are impacted, can we solve this by using RCEP rules? Would it be binding? And even in these circumstances, well, I think that this is an area that we need to further study on. So the point is that if we go beyond RCEP with the relationship with third country partners, this is something that we need to take some precaution. It's not just a rosy picture. There may be not negative, but there may be some unexpected impact from RCEP, and I think that we need to prepare in advance. Thank you.
Thank you. If we look at outside the region, there are many other issues that can be raised, and I think it's this forum that needs to tackle such issues. Mr. Stanley Lim,
들으시면서
as you listen to the discussions taking place, did you think of something that you would like to add to the question and answers, or do you have any questions on your part?
I think what I can contribute is that just now there are some questions on logistics hub. I think the logistics hub is actually important in terms of proximity and connectivity. You see, if a manufacturing country, for example, Vietnam or Cambodia, I'm not talking about China here, I'm talking Vietnam and Cambodia, where the low-cost manufacturing industries are there. So, but they do the manufacturing, but that doesn't mean that they are efficient in the logistics. And this may give rise to higher logistic costs. We are not talking about the manufacturing costs. So this is where the individual governments on funding the infrastructure development, for example, for these warehouses, road connectivity, and the port facilities or airport facilities. You see, like Vietnam and Cambodia, they're not necessary to have, they can cater for mega ships or those bigger freighter planes that can carry the load out. So they will have to go to logistic hub airports. For example, Singapore, there are goods coming here to connect. They come up with the A320 or 321 coming out and then come to Singapore, and then they connect the bigger planes to go to US and Europe. So these are the things that it's important that the logistic hub happen to be in the manufacturing country may not be ideal. So, but if the cost of if the value of the goods are of low value, so it doesn't make sense to go to a logistic hub for connection, for connectivity. So I think if you need to choose the logistics hub in accordance to connectivity and also proximity to the consumers. So I think this part here, not many in ASEAN, but I think they are gearing up for expanding their port facilities and also not only expanding the port to cater for bigger ships, but it's also the systems, the data systems and all that, so that they can easily arrange for the ships for the port stay to be reduced, so that the logistic cost is also reduced by if for the shipping lines and the airlines that they can charge lower freight for that. I think this is part and parcel of how we can arrange within the RCEP countries, and probably in time to come, this will come into place very soon when together with all the RCEP agreement come into place, that you see how we can move to store in different countries so that you can manufacture ahead and you can send out from the hub itself, you know. So I think in time to come, it will come into place when the RCEP come into effect.
네, 감사합니다. 이
Thank you.
갖고 우리가 물류
Mr. Lim talked about the meaning of a logistics hub and also about what need to prepare in order to become a sound logistics hub. Thank you very much for that insightful response. And now we would like to conclude the panel discussion for session 1. Thank you to the speakers and panelists. A big round of applause, please.
네, 한 아세안 물류 비즈 싱크 포럼.
Thank you. This was business session 1 of ASEAN Republic of Korea Logistics Think and Biz Forum. We will have business session 2 in the afternoon after lunch, and I'll see you back at 2 p.m. Thank you.